Welcome to Jamestown Talks, where community meets conversation. In each episode, we sit down with local leaders, doers, and decision makers who are helping shape the future of our town. From public safety and planning to parks and partnerships, we're covering the topics that matter most to Jamestown's residents. Whether you're curious about how town services work, want to meet the people behind the scenes, or just love staying in the loop, this is your front row seat to all things Jamestown. Let's talk about what makes our town thrive. Let's talk Jamestown. Today on Jamestown Talks, we're joined by Town Council member Rebecca Mann Rayborn. Known for her dedication and thoughtful leadership, Rebecca plays a key role in shaping Jamestown's future. We're excited to hear her insights on public service, community, and what's ahead for our town.
All right. Well, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Rebecca Mann Rayborn. I'm from Jamestown, and I am so Jamestown. I live in the home that I grew up in again. So.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Yeah.
What was your career before you got involved in local government?
Let's see. I have always been big on volunteering. And so, through high school and college, I volunteered. And immediately after college, I was an English major, but not Shakespeare type English, but like language and editing and communications type English, and did a stint as a technical writer for computer manuals. And that was, it was a wonderful job. And it was very not me at all. And so after a year of that, I got more into the nonprofit field. And since then, most of my work was in community organizing and advocacy, and just kind of illuminating how government works for folks, and how educating them on how they could turn their passions into tangible, positive change if that's what they wanted to do.
Yeah. Can you describe what your role in town is as a town council member?
Sure. Well, I've been on council for about 8 years now, and so I'm in the role now. I think when everybody gets on, they're sort of like, what is it I'm supposed to do? So, obviously we go to meetings and we participate in that. When issues come to us, we, talk them through and think them over. If there is a vote that needs to come, obviously we do the research that we need to do, and we listen to folks. People come to meetings and tell us what they think of things, but also, I like to talk to people just in the community, because most people don't come to meetings, and they, a lot of times aren't aware of what's going on. And so I like to kind of check pulse all over, not just folks that we do hear from. And so it's really just a lot of listening and, research and education, working with staff, relying on their expertise to look into things. Occasionally talking to folks from outside of the community if it's things that have happened other places. And so, a lot of research, compiling information, talking with other council members, and kind of figuring out what is best for the town, but then also what is legal, which that's a whole other thing. Certainly there are plenty of things I think each of us individually would love to do, but then there are things that we are allowed to do, and things that within a town council, it's legal to do. So you have to kind of take all those bits and pieces and then make the best decisions possible for the community. And that can involve things like ordinances and, how big can your fence be and that kind of thing, or, what do signs in town need to look like, zoning issues, that type of thing. It also involves, working on the budget and, just deciding whether or not we need taxes or fees increased or left the same, and how we can kind of move things around to make things, keep things as people want in the town, but also look at the realities of how much things cost, and see if that's feasible.
What motivated you to run for town council 8 years ago after your previous career?
Yeah, well, I had always, like I said, been interested in kind of how policy works, and it had mainly been at the state level that I had done that kind of work. But I really have always, like I said, been interested in volunteering. My husband and I had moved back into Jamestown by that point, and my daughter was about 2 years old, and just realized, I'd like to really stick closer to home, and the things that truly impact us day to day are the things that happen on the town level and the decisions that are made at the council level. And so it's funny because several people had contacted my husband's parents to try to get him to run for council. And that happened a couple times, and I thought, huh, okay, he's an attorney. He would make a great council member. I have no concerns about that. But it's like, hey, I'm the one who knows policy. Like, what? And I just realized, like, wait a second, I could do this. And I realized if I feel like other people, of my generation and people with young kids and people who are from here, I really feel like they should be volunteering and doing things in the community. And I felt like, if I feel like other people should be doing the same, then I need to be willing to do that too. So that's kind of how I got involved.
What's it been like coming back to the community where you grew up to serve as a council member?
It's been really positive. I've enjoyed it a lot. When I have friends on other councils and in bigger cities and things like that, and I always think, man, I would not want to serve anywhere else, really. The types of issues that they face and things like that are just, it's nice to be in a place where it is a small town, and we do have that, small town feel, and we don't have a lot of the concerns of much larger places. And so, that has been very welcoming. I've really enjoyed that it is a nonpartisan seat, that all council members, are nonpartisan, and the decisions we make are not connected to, any party or any kind of outside ideology. It's all just what's in the community. And so really being able to work with the community and really just focus on what's going on right here has been fantastic. And, like I said, growing up here, there's still a lot of folks who live here that I grew up, with. And so that has been really fun to be able to kind of come home and work on their behalf, and also get their expertise. A lot of these folks have been here, they were my parents' generation, that type of thing. So to be able to, hear their ideas and concerns and that kind of thing, and be able to kind of move some of those things forward has been really nice.
How have you been able to apply some skills from your past careers into this public service role?
It's been interesting to see it kind of from the other side, because I would host lobby days and advocacy trainings and that type of thing, and work with people to really show them how to amplify their voice, and really demystify what it's like working with elected officials, and saying, they're just regular people, they're just like any of us. And so now I feel like I'm really living it. Like, hey, I'm just your neighbor. I'm just a normal person who cares about the community. And so I think it's been really helpful to kind of be able to have that perspective from both sides, to have been an advocate, and I still am for a lot of things, but also to be on the other side of that, and realize, that sometimes people will approach me and they'll be concerned about something, and it'll be, I'll have to kind of filter it through a lens of like, okay, I don't need to take this personally because I know what they're doing. Or, I can see, especially people who really know how to advocate for themselves, is really impressive to me, because I know that that's not always an easy thing to do. But I think, it's been a real advantage to be able to see it kind of from both sides. And also, I've been able to offer people some tips too of, hey, if you come to us, and I can say this from somebody who has done it, for a living, but then also been on the other side of that table, if you have a concern, or if you have an idea, approach us knowing that we're just your neighbors, and, you just want to have a conversation. There's not a need to immediately assume that we don't agree with you, because probably if we're from the same place and we care about the same things in the community, then we, most likely do agree. So finding that common ground has been really important too, I think.
Did you have any type of vision for the future of Jamestown when you came in as a candidate?
Yeah, like I said, since I am from here, I had a great childhood in Jamestown. I really enjoyed growing up here, and my husband and I moved back here in part because our parents were still here, but also having a kid, and we're like, where would we want to raise our family? And this is the exact community that we would want to do that in. And so I think just, again, seeing when people say they love the small town, kind of walkable feel of Jamestown, that's the same thing that I love about it too. And so just doing what I can to kind of maintain that type of thing, and, help grow the good things about town. And then when there are things that, we have to do, again, legally, especially development and changes and things like that. How do we do it in a way that makes the most sense with the town and what folks in town want? But then also, how can we kind of increase the positive, the historic parts of Jamestown, the small town feel of Jamestown, that kind of thing? How can we make sure that that is also growing at the same time to kind of mitigate some of the things that we just kind of have to do?
Did your vision change at all as you served as a council member?
I don't think it necessarily changed. I definitely learned a lot more about the process. I keep talking about the legal things that we have to do. Certainly, I learned a lot more about the binds that small towns or any municipality in the state have around them as far as what decisions we can make for ourselves, and then what things kind of years ago folks at the state level decided that towns couldn't be trusted with. And so again, I think it's less me changing my feelings about what should happen in town, but more realizing, okay, well, this is the reality. And so what can we do to make sure that we stay that kind of positive, friendly community that we are, without but still doing things that we need to have done.
Were there any areas that were particularly surprising learning about when you started as a council member, like taxes or the legal stuff?
Something that has been really interesting to learn about has been everything within like public services and public works. That is, that's the thing that few people think about, but everybody relies on most. And so, if you flush your toilet and it stops going through the pipes, or if you turn on the tap and water stops coming out, or if you keep putting trash out and it doesn't get picked up, like that is going to be a bigger impact on your day than really anything happening at the federal or state level, or in some cases even the county. So those really, those issues I think kind of were solidified as far as like, okay, this is really where the rubber meets the road. We take care of neighborhood roads too. So things like that, I think it's just learning more about them and how big of an impact that really has on people, and how important that is to make sure that everything along those lines is really running perfectly. And staff does such an amazing job with all those things, because I think, we don't have to think about it. I think having lived here as long as I have in the community around here, and everyone always talks about how great those services are, that's kind of, when you don't have to think about it, that's really a testament to how well it works. Because if one little thing goes wrong, then that can really throw your day.
What process did you use to learn about these things? And did you ever feel kind of intimidated by tackling these, things you'd never learned about before?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Our staff is fantastic. And so really relying a lot on them has been big for the things that are very specific to our community. The UNC School of Government has fantastic classes as well. And so definitely, both classes that are kind of, I don't want to say advertised us, but they send us mailers and get us information like that. And staff in the School of Government make us aware of those things. There's also requirements of certain courses that we have to take. There's the North Carolina League of Municipalities has programs and classes, and so those have been really good for kind of the big picture and just sort of how things work. But we've really, or I and I know the other council people have really relied a lot on staff for that kind of expertise of like, okay, so we understand, this is how taxes work in a community, but then we can go to Faith and other, Judy before her, and say, okay, tell me specifically, how does this work, or what does this mean, and that kind of thing.
Even with all that information, how do you handle some of the tough decisions you have to make on council?
I really, like, before every meeting, I really think about, wanting to make sure that any decisions that I and the rest of us make are good for the people of the town, the staff, the future of the town, the environment, and honoring the history of the town. And I think just really keeping those things in focus is very helpful as far as when a decision comes up or something, if we get a curveball or something like that, really thinking through those points and seeing like, okay, what would be most true to these things? And, sometimes they're at odds. But for the most part, the decisions that we make here, I think, can fall in those categories, and it's not super tough to be able to make a decision. They're not, I mean, they're hard decisions, but it's okay to me if things are difficult. I just want to make sure they're right. But sometimes the challenge is then how do you convey that to other people, kind of in a snippet that they're willing to listen to. So that part can be a challenge too.
Going off that, what's the
Mhm.
hardest part you think about serving as a council member?
Let's see, what is the hardest part? Um, it doesn't happen much. I've found, I think the people who live in the town and the people who are really aware of what happens on that level, understand that all of us are here because we truly care about the town and we want to make the best decisions. It is hard though when we're faced with something and have to make a decision that is not popular. And if people are not willing to at least hear out, like, this is why we made that decision, or, I completely understand if they don't agree with it. But, I feel like I try to give other people that opportunity to say, well, okay, well, why would you want it done differently? And we can respect that, versus if somebody just doesn't want to hear, like, well, I would have made a different decision, but it would have been illegal and we would have been sued. That's not always, a soundbite that people want to hear. So I think just common respect is the most important thing. And sometimes, that bums me out when we don't get that.
On the flip side, what's your favorite part about serving as a council member?
I just love being able to represent the community. I really feel like, again, having been from here, I want to be for everyone in town, but I also really have a special place for the folks who have been here a long time and have really given back to the community, and especially older folks who live in town who've maybe served on council or who've been on committees and who have been really instrumental in the Historic Society or the Library Board or JDA or something, things that have made a big difference in the community. So the folks who are in Rotary and Civitans and that type of thing, that I guess I would call them like the doers, but the people who really built the town up. And I want to make sure that their needs are always in focus too. And I think that a lot of times you see growth happening, or you see things changing, and a lot of times these folks are retiring and moving out, maybe moving closer to family and things like that. And it can be easy to look at, like, what's the shiny new business coming up, or what's the brand new thing we can do, or we've got new people moving in, we want to make sure that we meet their needs, which we do, but I want to make sure that the people who have lived here so long and have given back so much really get what they need too.
I like that phrase, the doers. What are some ways people can become a doer in town and help build up the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just as simple as looking around and seeing, what might need to be done, but also really thinking what kind of special skills and interests do they have that could benefit the community, and then seeing where those things fit. And if there's a question, they can talk to me or any of the council people, staff, any of the nonprofits in the town or anything like that, and really find out how to make those connections. But I think a lot of times people just don't see themselves as, being qualified or the right people or whatever to serve in those capacities, but they really are. I mean, I think that, I often think to parents of young kids. My daughter is 9 now, but when I first ran, she was 2. And I'd been involved in a lot of things, prior to that too. And when I talk to folks who also have younger kids, a lot of times they say, well, that sounds interesting, but, let me wait until my child is older and my kids are grown, which I totally understand. We don't have an infinite amount of time, but I think that also ignores the huge impact that you can have on your child if they see you serving as there from a young age. So like now my daughter she's like, well, moms are on council. I mean, that's just what happens. It's not unusual for her to see that kind of thing. And she has sort of been my biggest booster in a lot of ways. And so I think it's really important for, folks of all ages to take that on. And so I think, first of all, you have to recognize that, yeah, you do have the ability to serve, and just sometimes your lived experience is your expertise that you can bring to those roles. So at the library, for example, They have children's programming along with a lot of other things. Well, it could be helpful to have some people who are familiar with young kids in this day and age to be able to serve there and volunteer and that kind of thing. So, and the same with at the town. We have a planning board, we have a Parks and Rec committee. Having people with young kids on the Parks and Rec committee is vitally important. We're just building, almost finished with a new playground now, and to have that kind of expertise and people knowing this is what this is what kids like to play on these days. It's not the metal slides anymore and that kind of thing. Our staff does a great job, but really having that voice on the committees and boards as well is really important.
Do you think there's anything else people could stand to gain from being more engaged in local government, even if they're not interested in national politics or national level government?
Absolutely. I think that's the people who most should be involved in local politics. Certainly one thing, you had asked before about things I had learned kind of at the local level. And this is not specifically about Jamestown, but one thing that I've both learned while serving here, but also observed, and I've talked to other people doing similar things, is this is really sort of the last level that isn't super politicized. And, certainly in a day and age where people feel like everything is so polarized and you have to have strong opinions on this and this and this, and you have to be this party or not care at all. It's just really refreshing to be on a board where parties don't matter. A couple of us are independent actually, and that kind of thing. And we can just set all that kind of thing aside and really just focus on, okay, what is going on in Jamestown? What do the people here need? What do the organizations need, the people and places that we serve, and really be able to have kind of that laser focus over this like 3 square mile area. That is really nice. And I think that's refreshing and would be to other people too, to realize, there are places still that you can go, and it's not, people aren't screaming at each other and we all are here for the same reason. So that's really nice.
Do you think there's, can you think of any misconceptions of things that people think are handled at the local level, but are actually more the state or federal government's responsibility?
Sure. Well, I mean, this is still kind of local level, but a huge thing are public schools. People don't always understand. And sometimes I've seen, folks mainly in other communities, they'll campaign and make it seem like their city council has any control over the local public schools. And that's really doing just as a service to people. That has been the biggest, I think, misconception, that, town council has something to do with the schools, which we don't. I mean, we try to have good working relationships with certainly Gilbert County schools, and the county commissioners do provide the funding for Gilbert County schools, and there's a school board that does that as well. So we try to, be in contact where appropriate with those places, but if something happens to your kid at school, or if you feel like they should be offering this program or this or something like that, I mean, that's not a town concern. And then I think certainly zoning is the other big area where people assume that towns we can just do whatever we want. If we want to say you can only have one house per 4 acres or something like that we can just decide that. And that's just not true. It may have been many, many years ago. We have ordinances. We do have the ability to make some decisions along those lines. But that has really changed, really, since 2010, 2011. There were some very big changes at the state level. Decisions were made to pull a lot of that local governance away from the local towns and cities. And so there are big changes that have been there since. I guess prior to that, maybe you could say, your houses have to be made of this material and they have to have this style and that kind of thing. And we, there are some ways, like with the planned unit development that we have worked on in the past, that you can negotiate with developers for that type of thing. But that's really not something we have the ability to do. And actually right now, and I feel like going forward, there are more and more bills at the state level designed specifically just to take any of those zoning abilities we do have away from the town. So that's something I really want folks to know, that if that's a concern of theirs, that there are things happening right now, and that's something they need to contact their state representatives about.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for anyone that's thinking about running for town council someday?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, first of all, please come to the meetings. That one thing I remember, I thought it was so funny years ago. I started coming to town council meetings because you don't, why would you be interested in serving somewhere if you didn't know what they necessarily did? And I remember a reporter for the Jamestown News came up to me and after I filed, and she said, most people don't even come to a town council meeting before they file to run. And I thought, well, that seems, I wouldn't want to get into it if I wasn't in the room and feeling, how that felt and knowing what was going on around me. And so I think just coming to meetings and seeing for yourself, how do these things run? And this is something you'd have to be sitting in on and participating in. So that would be really important. And then also recognizing there are a lot of meetings in between those meetings, sometimes just one-on-one type things, or if you, like I said before, if you have questions coming in and talking with staff, meeting, one-on-one with maybe another council member if you have an issue you want to work through, or if you want to, get some feedback on something. So really just becoming aware of what it entails. And you can ask any of the council members too. I think that is really good too. We want more people to be involved. We want to be able to support other people running. So I would say certainly approach, a council member as well. And then the staff, especially our town clerk, has a lot of information that somebody would want to know about and could illuminate that for you. And then obviously the Gilbert County Board of Elections has all the nitty gritty of, how you would do it. But I would just say, talk to people. We all want to learn more about folks and bring more people into it. Serving on boards and committees also is a really big way to get involved, that we always need folks to do that. So that's another thing that at town hall they have forms are online that you can fill out and get involved that way. So I would say just, dip your toe in to figure out if it's something you would even want to do first, and then, ask the people that are doing it or have been in that orbit or maybe served before, get their feedback too.
And then for people that might not be ready to run on town council, do you have any ideas for some baby steps of civic engagement to get them started?
I think, again, coming to council meetings, or you can watch them online. I'm a really big proponent for, if at all possible, at least stop into one. But or come to a planning board meeting or something like that. Or I really feel like the nonprofit boards and organizations in the area are really good for that kind of thing as well. I've served on a number of boards before running for council, and it's not the exact same, but there are a lot of similarities for that. But I think just, finding out more about the issues, like reading the local paper and, doing some research, talking to your neighbors, that type of thing, are good ways to kind of get a little bit involved. And certainly if you hear something that sounds a little bit off, doing more research to find out, like, okay, wait, that sounds like that wouldn't exactly be what someone, what one of my neighbors would vote for. Like, why, what's going on there? And doing that little bit of research to kind of bridge that gap.
And then if somebody did have a problem in Jamestown that they wanted to address to council or staff, what are some good avenues that they could go about making some positive change?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would depend on what the nature of the issue was. So, maybe figuring out, like, is this more of a staff issue or is this more of a policy type issue? But if it is something that the council would decide on, they can certainly call or email us, set up a meeting. I'm always free for, sitting down and having coffee with somebody. I like doing that because I feel like that kind of puts more people at ease rather than having something super official, although we can do that too. I think that, calling or emailing, one thing, and in fact, I was speaking with somebody who is involved in an organization in town last month maybe, and he was saying that their group really wants to have an event in town at Rim Miller Park. And I said, well, for the logistics of that, you could contact the staff. And he said, well, I really feel like this could be a whole community event. And I said, well, a great thing about our meetings is we do have a public comment period. And so if there's something that you want to make sure everybody knows, that is a really fantastic way to get that information out there, whether you're asking a question or if you just want to make people aware of something. And so anybody could come and sign up for their 3 minutes and say their piece. And that's a good way for all the council members and the mayor to hear what you have to say all at once. And so there's no question about like, well, I had a conversation with this person over here and this person over here. Everybody can just hear it all at the same time. The only thing about that is just the way the meetings are set up. We don't respond back. So, it's not a conversation. It's more of an opportunity just for anyone to be able to come and, make an announcement or raise an issue, but not expect it to be solved right then. Certainly we can follow up afterwards, but, that's a way for everybody to hear everything at once. And then you can do your follow-ups, or we can do ours after that.
Nice. If you had to choose like just one meaningful civic action for everyone to do today, what would it be?
Oh man, one meaningful civic action. I think just, volunteering one place or doing one thing. I like picking up trash around town. I find a lot of weird stuff doing that. So that it can be humorous as well as, keeping the place clean. Things like that are good. If you just see a problem, you can fix it. But I think volunteering with other people is really important, because then it's not just something you see and you focus on, but you are hearing from other people as well. And obviously it's easier to tackle something if you've got a group of people doing it at once. And that can really be anything. That can be joining the Rotary Club or the Civitans. That can be serving on a board. That can be leading a scout troop, or, coaching your kids at basketball, or even if you don't have kids, I'm sure the Y would be happy to have someone who wants to do that, coaching there, or volunteering at Jamestown Elementary, reading to kids, that kind of thing. I think there's not like one specific way to do it. It's just a matter of getting involved in the way that's meaningful to you, but in a local capacity.
And then are there any like hidden gems in Jamestown you wish more people knew about, whether it's a group or a place?
I'm not telling. If it's a hidden gem. I think one thing that's great about Jamestown is it's the whole package, certainly like each individual piece is great. But all of it together is what makes it special. And so I love being able to get up early on a Saturday morning and biking down to, the Blue House Bakery or Kindred or somewhere, and just getting coffee and sitting out on the porch. Having a really walkable, friendly community where you can be out and about, and, whether it's walking through the neighborhood or, doing something like that. I'm really excited about the new playground at Jamestown, or playgrounds at Jamestown Park. Just the things that you can be out and about and doing. So yeah, maybe that's a cop out. There's not, but yes, you know what? I guess there is one hidden gem that I love, which is the used bookstore in the basement of the library.
Ooh,
yeah, there's it funds the Friends of the Library, which do a lot, including like the summer kids program that the library runs. But that has been something that's really been growing over the years. They'll have periodic book sales. Sometimes they'll have them in the parking lot, or you can come in and do it. But whenever the library's open, there are book rooms downstairs where you can go and buy books and benefit the library. So that's a good place to be.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you want to add or talk about, or you think this?
I think you've pretty much covered it. I just really, want folks to get involved in the way that works for them, and just encourage people, especially ones who might be sort of on the fence or think like, oh, I don't know if this is the right time for me, or I don't know, I just don't feel like, I have the expertise for this or something like that, to really push past that and look a little further and realize like, hey, you know what, if I am somebody who utilizes the golf course or something like that, then that means my voice is important there. And, that maybe serving on the Parks and Rec committee is something, I can give to that, because I do have that expertise of being someone who uses that service. And so just really challenging themselves to think about, how they can serve the community, and that benefits them greatly too. I think also, I'll jump back when I was right out of college, and I had a job in the tech sector for a year, and that was when everything sort of imploded. And so I found myself laid off with a bunch of other people, and it had been my volunteerism that got me that next job. And that was really not just the contacts that I made, but the leadership abilities that I had been given through volunteering that, right out of college, somebody wasn't going to give me a job as heading up an organization, but I was the president of a statewide board right out of college or soon after. And so that, allowed me to really, build up my leadership and, help me learn things that I wouldn't have known any other way. And so I think that, yes, a lot of times we want to think about volunteerism as like giving back to others, but it also is really enriching for the individual as well. So I would encourage, even, high schoolers or people who are in college or maybe right out, if they are still trying to think about what they want to do in the future and want to try out things, that, volunteering is a great way to do that. It gives you that opportunity, and people entrust you with a lot, if you are motivated and willing to do it and you're going to show up and give it your all. I think that volunteering can really help you grow, as well as be a great way to help the community.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.